Good morning, Michael. Thank you for joining me for this conversation. I'm looking forward to catching up with you. How are things from Palm Beach?
Things are bright and sunny, and there's a lot going on in the digital asset world as we speak today. So, Kate, it's great to be with you and the Milken Institute.
Absolutely. Thanks. So, top of mind this morning is obviously the news coming out of China. The PBOC is cracked down on cryptocurrency-related transactions. It's not entirely a surprise given sort of the incremental targeted actions their central bank has taken, but do you see this posing a potential threat, or what is the impact on the Fed's central bank digital currency? I know we're days away from Powell coming out with some sort of indication where we're going to go with a CBDC. Do you feel like this news is going to impact that decision in any way?
I don't. I mean, I think you've got a couple things playing out here. We're at such a unique digital asset inflection point, Kate, and in this period of digital transition, China has been cracking down and promoting its own digital yuan and controlling the consumer and trying to really write its own rules of the road of what digital assets mean and should mean going forward. And then, on this side of the world, you've got the Fed really at white paper stage, trying to figure out what the future of money in the United States will look like. But I think for China right now, it's showing a bit of its hand, and it's showing that they are threatened by things that are out of their control. Right. And whenever that occurs, authoritarian governments crack down and they create new levers of control. So I think it's not surprising what China's doing, and I don't think it will directly impact what the United States does.
And for folks in China, they've had a pretty robust NFT market thus far. Of course, cryptocurrencies are the natural on-ramp to purchasing a lot of these NFTs. Do you see China's action this morning driving the NFT trade out of China and potentially into countries where they are more welcoming to digital assets and cryptocurrencies?
Well, you're right. I mean, as you and I have been discussing, the NFT sales in the last year and a half have mostly been coming from Asia in a certain number of whales in the NFT market. So given that the Ethereum blockchain is the blockchain of choice for the art market, this did impact Ethereum today, unfortunately. And I think that sales from Asia will continue to be on the rise. There are a lot of savvy operators in China and outside of China that will find ways to work with digital assets. I think authoritarian governments are quickly learning that they can't control everything. And digital assets, when they're not run by a central bank, they can exist outside of their control. So it is interesting to see this. It'll be interesting to see how the art auction houses deal with China now, given this development. But I see other hotspots in Asia likely to pick up the NFT sales and the contemporary art sales. Let's remember, it's not just NFTs, right? You can buy contemporary art through Asia, and now auction houses are truly legitimizing the digital asset space. So definitely an area to watch, especially on Ethereum going forward.
Absolutely. And I think you're 100% right. We will see the Singapore market sort of picking up the slack where NFTs are being driven out of China. But
yeah, I mean, what do you think, Kate? I mean, regarding China, like, does this surprise you at all, given what their hand has shown, or do you think that this is just a continuation of their digital yuan sort of strategy leading to the Olympics?
I think China for a long time has been trying to undermine the dominance of the dollar in the global marketplace and creating a position where folks are unable to use any alternative other than the digital yuan or their blockchain service network. Things like that drive out competition and are sort of the antithesis of the open market that we champion in the United States, and competition breeds innovation and things like that. So they're sort of taking an opposite but much more aggressive approach to streamlining technology or digital assets that are only those owned and operated by the Chinese central banks, which is sort of the antithesis of digital assets you could really make an argue for. But I think it's interesting to see what's happening in China because it feels like their regulations and their movements are happening a lot faster than I've seen in the United States. There's a lot of like cautious skepticism going on in Congress from Powell. On Wednesday, Powell mentioned that in regards to a CBDC, it's better to move slowly and to get it right in the long run, but that strategy becomes more complicated when you see what China's doing with the digital yuan. I know that they're, I believe, technically in sort of like a testing phase, but the way that it operates in their country, it's very much so operational. So it puts a little bit of pressure on the United States to see where we will come in response to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that the era of dollar dominance is waning, and I think it's necessary for the United States first to recognize that, to make the transition to dollar innovation a true national security strategy, to make it part of the national security strategy, and to lead. I think what Powell, if I'm reading between the tea leaves, the United States is still betting that its reserve currency is completely stable and powerful moving forward. I think it is, but I think right now lack of innovation and complacency is our kryptonite.
Yeah.
And just like Woodrow Wilson in the League of Nations, Kate, when he brought together countries, the United States didn't sign on to the League of Nations, but we convened the leading countries. And I almost think we need to do that right now at this moment with our European allies, Japanese, New Zealand, Australians. Hopefully the French will come, and to really convene a digital asset Bretton Woods, right?
Yeah.
To create a whole new framework. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think white papers are going to be enough anymore. I think we're going to have to be much more proactive.
Yeah. Start putting our money where our mouth is. I completely agree. I would love to see the United States come in collaboration with the countries that we work well with. We do a lot of tax strategies internationally with the Netherlands, the UK, Australia, countries like that. I would like to see a similar digital asset strategy come into place, especially as sanctions avoidance has been so prevalent and has sort of dominated a ton of conversations in Congress and in policies that are coming out. It's time for international collaboration to be prioritized. I like what you said, that, I think we have enough white papers. We sort of know the beast that we're dealing with. At least we should by now. Digital assets are not entirely new. Their popularity has definitely skyrocketed as of late. I think a lot of that has to do with COVID, people's frustration with incumbent financial institutions and looking for options and alternatives. And the digital marketplace has provided that tenfold. And when Powell talks about a CBDC rendering crypto obsolete, I raise my eyebrows at that a little bit because I think in the ideal world, we've got fiat currencies and digital currencies and options. And that's what champions the United States as the sort of the premier reserve globally, is how powerful and how broad we've been historically. But I think we need to keep up with what our legacy has been, because I think we've fallen behind a little bit on our tech policy.
Yeah. No, I think I would echo that and say that we've never been a country to admire countries and admire the rise of other issues. We're a proactive country. And so sometimes what I hear from policymakers is a sense that, well, it's going to take too long for China to internationalize the digital yuan. And there's too many changes they need to make to their own financial markets and system. And it's going to take too long for the euro to reform their capital markets. And I think rather than waiting for that to occur, the United States has an opportunity to realize that we've entered a multipolar world. And as you said, people are frustrated by dollar dominance. They want options. They want a basket of currencies where equity and inclusion, privacy are all championed. And people want more access to financial services that may not be through a central bank. And they may be wanting a future global digital wallet where DeFi and stable coins and central bank digital currencies are all living alongside each other. What do you think about that? Do you think that they can all live alongside each other with different purposes if we had an appropriate regulatory framework?
Absolutely. I think there's no one-size-fits-all approach to the way we operate money, especially with how borderless transactions have become, and remittances have always distributed billions of dollars annually across the globe. And we didn't see those numbers falter during the pandemic as some people anticipated. So I think having a multitude of options for payment rails for people, that drives competition, and it allows people the flexibility to deploy digital currencies or a central bank digital currency or, paper cash if necessary when it feels right. And that will bolster the independent strengths of each one. I could see a world where money that comes from the government, say your tax refund, it comes through a central bank digital currency wallet, and you send money internationally through a privately owned and operated cryptocurrency wallet. I could see all of those things happening in place, and having regulators on board with that flexibility and not seeing sort of an either or a mutually exclusive, it's either a Bitcoin or a CBDC or a stable coin, not having that attitude allows the marketplace to do what it does best. And, we've been talking about China a lot this morning, and they're an authoritarian government system. And I think the United States should lean into the capitalist free market alternative and lean into the fact that our strength has been in options, in giving consumers the right to choose. I think that's where we will remain in control and powerful globally, is by maintaining that legacy.
Yeah, I think there's a new digital asset foreign policy really taking shape, right? You've got the countries like China, Russia, Iran, Belarus, some countries in Eastern Europe that are really in Russia's camp, and some in South America. And it's alarming to see China's rise in Latin America. Axios had an alarming graphic that showed just China's influence in Latin America in the last 12 years. So I do think you're going to have a camp in the world of non-authoritarian governments that are going to use central bank digital currencies and digital assets for good for the consumer.
Yeah.
And then you're going to see a split screen where you have the authoritarian governments use it for control. And so it seems to me like a digital asset bill of rights where we need that right now on cyber. We don't have it. It's sort of a wild, wild west when it comes to how we're using data. It seems very necessary to have a new framework, not only regulatory guardrails here in the United States, but with our allies and cross-border with central banks. And from what I'm hearing about the white paper that's going to come out by the Fed, is the cross-border issue will be essential to how the United States will innovate going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I totally echo that point. Aristotle quoted, money, it does not exist by nature, it exists by law. And I've been thinking about that quote a lot recently. And the way that money has evolved since forever. I mean, money used to be people trading seashells and trading stones and agricultural tools. And now it is so much broader than that. And having an international group, sort of like the Paris Accord or others, where we have agreed upon principles of, like what those safety measures are, what the guardrails are, limiting government overreach, allowing private companies to continue innovating, sometimes alongside government's own payment rails. I know the Fed is working on coming out with something closer to real-time payments, which I'm thrilled about. But having a signed agreement, or even just communicating what people are looking for, what these countries are looking to come out of digital assets, having allies, like true international allies in countries that have the same values as the United States and see digital assets progressing the same way.
Right.
That is exciting.
It is exciting, and you've got 80 plus central banks right now in pilot programs for central bank digital currencies. There's important best practices that can be shared, and it seems to me like this would be the right moment for a presidential working group among those allied countries, among Chairman Powell, Christine Lagarde, and our key G7 non-authoritarian allies to team up on this issue to really champion that. But going back to Aristotle, it will require an act of Congress in the United States for a digital dollar. It will require very strong reasoning and clear reasoning why the United States need this. How is this different from how we are doing digital banking right now? What does it mean for commercial banks moving forward? And is this good and necessary for the United States? And my sense is those are some of the questions that Chairman Powell will tackle. And it's very rare to see divides in the Fed play out openly, but you are seeing that between Lael Brainerd promoting central bank digital currencies, Randy Quarles in his parachute pants speech promoting stable coins. So my prediction is we're not going to see anything meaningful with real teeth come out of this study, and we likely will see kind of a slow teetering along this approach where it may take an event for it to push the United States to actually elevate this issue.
So, Michael, you brought up Congress. Do you think that there is enough bipartisan support or even just general excitement on the Hill to move something like a CBDC along? There's been so many contentious arguments and conversations and hearings and off the record. is Congress at a place where they can make a decision around this?
I think, Kate, it's going to have to require bipartisan agreement that there's no alternative than to compete with China than dollar innovation. So I think that Congress should give the SEC and others more authority to provide a regulatory framework for the decentralized finance sector. I think the stablecoin group wants transparency, and you're seeing that with companies like Circle go the SPAC route as of late. I think with regards to central bank digital currencies, their question on both sides will be, is this an adequate response to what China's doing? And I think that if there was a bill in Congress about dollar innovation and creating innovation in our financial system that would create more global competitiveness, that could be successful, but there has to be privacy built in and a true rationale where it's under the competitiveness umbrella. I think right now, given where we are and given that we are going to be heading into the midterms and a presidential election, my fear is that this becomes overly political and you will see two different camps where the consumer is left hanging. Because I think from a global competitiveness perspective, the consumer needs help. The consumer needs help with access to financial services, and we as a country need to compete against China, but we also need to transition to an era of dollar innovation and not be complacent. So I think it's going to take some time, and like most things in Congress, it likely will have to be an emergency. The Patriot Act, as you remember, was languishing in Congress for years in the late 90s. And it took 9/11, unfortunately, to pass the Patriot Act. So my sense is we'll need some trigger event to move the needle to actually get a digital dollar into a position.
Well, I think if we can anticipate anything from China's actions this week, it's that trigger event is coming, and it's coming probably sooner rather than later. It doesn't make me feel entirely confident to think about the United States taking a reactionary response to whatever China does or continues to do in the future. I would love to see more proactive, offensive sort of action in that area. But if a big trigger event is what has to happen, then, so be it. I have faith that we will prevail and ultimately things will shake out as they need to, and our markets will play out in a way that hopefully ultimately produces strong results in the end, but we'll see.
Yeah, I would just say that this is going to require more than Congress and more than the government. This is going to require the innovation, the creativity, and the collaboration of the private sector. So many companies, Amazon, Square, are creating digital wallets that are looking at this issue. And just like we have tried to do in the cyber realm, we're going to have to do it in a public-private partnership. And this is truly an opportunity and an inflection point, Kate, for Silicon Valley as they compete against Shenzhen in China. And so we will need to truly have a Marshall Plan type of effort for dollar innovation. And just like great power competition was really made a point of the last administration's national security strategy, I really believe that dollar innovation needs to be risen to that level in the next national security strategy, because this is truly a geoeconomic moment in this digital transition.
Yeah, Michael, I completely agree with you. I would like to see Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C. and the regulators working together. There's been a little bit of internal cannibalization between Silicon Valley and the innovators and the folks in charge of regulating them. I think we all need to remember we're on the same team, and playing as if we are in each other's corner, proverbially, it's going to work out best for everyone. That's what's going to produce the best end result. So we'll see what happens, how things shake out. But, you and I will be waiting and anticipating the Fed's white paper. But it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me today.
No, it's a real pleasure, Kate, and I'm so happy to be with you and the Milken Institute to have this important dialogue at this important moment in the digital transition, and I look forward to continuing that conversation.
Absolutely.